I'm not a storyteller. I drive a bus. That's it. Route 7 Nightline out of Beckley, up US 19 and back while most people are asleep. I've been doing it almost 10 years. Same route, same busted suspension, same arguments at the fare box. About 6 months ago, I picked up a passenger who didn't have a face. And the worst part isn't that I saw it once, it's that it kept coming back. If you're listening to this on a bus right now, do yourself a favor and don't look at the mirror just yet. Most nights are white noise. I sign in, walk around the bus, kick the tires, listen to the air brakes hiss, tap the dash twice for luck, and pull out. After that, it's me, 40 feet of diesel rattle, and whoever climbs aboard. That night was a cold Tuesday in late fall. First couple of hours were routine. A miner still dotted in gray, 2 kids from the mall, a nurse in pink scrubs. One drunk tried to ride short on fare. He leaned over the fare box, eyes glassy, breath like a bar floor. I kept my voice low, pointed at the rules, and waited. He found more change, fed it in, stumbled to a seat. By 10:30, the bus had emptied the way it always does. The kids got off, then the miner at the hospital, then the nurse at Oak Hill. The drunk lurched down the steps after her. The passenger counter over the front door ticked down with each body. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Empty bus, last leg. Dispatch told me I was clear out of Oak Hill and to finish the route. US 19 at night is black trees and white paint. You learn its little tells, the dip that bumps your stomach, the curve that sloshes coffee out of the cup holder, the stretch after Oak Hill where the streetlights vanish. Past there, the last few stops are more habit than anything. One of them is Fayette Hollow. Rusted sign, patch of gravel. I can count on one hand how many people I've picked up there at night. I wasn't thinking about Fayette Hollow when my foot went to the brake. I didn't see anybody by the sign. No figure, no hand up, nothing but the post and the trees. But my body did the whole routine anyway. Signal, ease over, slow down. The bus sighed as it knelt next to the gravel. The doors folded open with that familiar gasp. Cold air slid up the steps. The automated voice announced the stop in its fake friendly tone. Outside was just darkened trunks. I sat for a few seconds with my hands on the wheel, listening. When the bus is quiet, you hear everything. Footsteps, zippers, somebody shifting in their seat. I heard the engine, the fan, my own breathing. Nothing else. I was about to close the doors when the passenger counter blinked from 0 to 1. Soft beep. 1 red digit. I stared at it, then at the empty doorway, then back at the number. Those counters are just infrared beams in a plastic box. They miss people sometimes. They double count a tall guy. I told myself it was a bad read. Sensors touchy. You're tired. Close the doors. So I did. Doors hissed shut. The bus lifted as the air system came back up, and I pulled onto 19. We rolled on into the trees. Headlights, black pavement, white lines. I let my mind drift the way you do when you've driven the same road 1,000 times. Then I glanced at the mirror. Someone was sitting in the middle of the bus, left side, under one of the dome lights. Hood up, hands on their knees, body facing forward. My first feeling wasn't horror, it was annoyance. I hadn't seen them get on, and I don't like realizing I've missed something that obvious. On a quiet bus, you hear every footstep. I hadn't heard a thing. I told myself they must have slipped on at the stop while I was looking at the counter. Maybe hugged the pole by the door, moved back as soon as I pulled away. It happens. You blink, you miss a moment. I kept my eyes on the road and tried to swallow the twist in my stomach. At the next straight stretch, I looked again. The figure sat too stiff. Most people slump or brace. This one was upright, like a statue belted into the cushion. The hood made a dark tunnel where the head should be. The light picked out the slope of shoulders, the edge of fabric. I tried to see their face. You don't notice how much your brain fills in until it can't. 2 shadows, that's eyes. Darker smudge, that's a mouth. Tilt of nose, line of jaw. My brain reached for all of that and slid off. Inside the hood, where the face should have been, was just skin. Not shiny like plastic, not burned or bandaged. Just pale, flat skin stretched over the front of the head. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Nothing for my brain to grab onto. For a second, it felt like looking at a bad photo that hadn't finished loading. Body and clothes sharp, front of the head blurred to nothing. My stomach flipped. Something in my brain said, "That's not how people are." My hands were slick on the wheel. The bus drifted right and the rumble strip growled under the tires. The guardrail flashed too close in the corner of my eye. Reflex yanked me back. I straightened us out, forced my eyes to the white line. My heart was punching my throat. I didn't look at the mirror for the next mile, because what was I supposed to do? Stop in the middle of nowhere and demand my faceless passenger, what, explain themselves? We rolled into the turnaround point, a little loop of asphalt with a busted street lamp and one lonely house with its porch light off. I eased to a stop, pulled the brake, flipped the interior lights brighter. "End of the line," I called, more for me than for whoever might be listening. "Last stop." No movement, no shuffle of shoes. I stood up, legs shaky, stepped out from behind the shield, heart thumping hard enough I could feel it in my neck. The bus was empty. No hoodie, no long fingers, just row after row of gray plastic and the faint hum of the lights. The little red number over the door still said 1. I reset it, held the button until it blinked to 0. On the way back to Beckley, I didn't stop at Fayette Hollow. I drove right past that sign and pretended I didn't see it. I didn't radio it in, didn't write it on the maintenance sheet, didn't tell the guys at the depot when we were bullshitting over coffee. I told myself it was nothing. That was my first mistake. I slept like shit after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hood under the dome light and that blank patch where a face was supposed to be. By morning, the memory had softened just enough I could blame it on fatigue. Long shift, bad lighting, maybe a mask. People are weird. I took my kid to school, drank too much gas station coffee, nodded along while she told me about a field trip I might not be able to afford. Normal life. I almost called off that night. Almost. Then I thought about the mortgage, the missed child support, my supervisor's last warning about attendance issues. One more sick day and the route would go to somebody else. Some kid who'd ride the brakes down the gorge and blame the bus, so I went in. The depot smelled like old coffee and wet rubber, same as always. A couple drivers leaning against vending machines, arguing about football. Nobody looked at me twice. I signed my sheet, grabbed my packet, did the walk around. Different bus than the night before, same tired bones. Counter blinked 0. Farebox chimed awake. Everything normal. Dispatch told me the board was light. No roadwork, no detours. I pulled out. The first half of the shift almost convinced me I'd imagined it. A group of half-drunk kids. A woman with grocery bags and dead eyes. A guy with paint on his hands who smelled like turpentine. The counter chimed as they came and went. 1, 3, 6, 4, 2. Every time I counted heads in the mirror, the number matched. That helped. It let my brain unclench a little. By the time we climbed past the hospital and rolled toward Oak Hill, the crowd thinned. The grocery lady and the paint guy got off at the strip mall. The last 2 riders were a quiet old man with a cane and a teenager drowning in hoodie and headphones. They both got off at Oak Hill. The counter went from 2 to 0. Empty bus. I told dispatch I was clear. They told me to finish the loop. Routine. Once the town lights dropped behind me, the old knot in my stomach came back. I told myself I would not stop at Fayette Hollow this time. No reason to, no bell, no raised hand, no stop. The sign showed up in the beams, Fayette Hollow Road, then slid past on the right. No slowdown, No doors, no cheery announcement. Good, I thought. See? Fine. I hit the straight stretch after it and let myself breathe a little easier. Then the ticket printer by my elbow whirred. I jumped. The bus swayed. I corrected. The little thermal printer by the fare box was running on its own. Nobody had swiped a card. No cash. My hands were both on the wheel. It spat out a slip and let it dangle from the slot like a tongue. The beep from the passenger counter came a heartbeat later. 0 flipped to 1. We were doing 50. Doors closed. No one at the steps. No one had crossed that beam. The road tunneled in front of me, too bright and too narrow. My fingers went numb. My training screamed not to slam the brakes. You ease a bus. Panic is how you roll one. I let us bleed speed, slow enough I could think, fast enough not to be obvious. There was a wide shoulder up ahead. I took it, signal ticking loud in the quiet, and eased us to a stop. The engine dropped to idle. Air brakes sighed. I forced myself to look at the mirror. The figure was in the same row as the night before. Left side. Under the dome light. Hood up. Hands on knees. The light was better this time. I could see the way the fabric draped over shoulders, the shape of the chest rising and falling. It wasn't a statue. I didn't look at the face. I'd already seen enough of that. I set the brake, stood on rubber legs, stepped out from behind the shield. The heater hummed. The bus smelled like dust and old disinfectant. The aisle stretched out longer than it had any right to. One step, another. My boots thudded too loud. At the row where it should have been, I stopped. The seat was empty. No hoodie, no body. Just worn fabric and a faint impression in the cushion. I turned slowly, scanning the other rows. Nothing. Checked the back. Checked the floor. Nothing. Up front, the counter still glowed 1. I tore off the dangling ticket. The print was wrong. No route number, no stop. Just a timestamp that didn't match my dash clock and a line of square little blocks where a name should have been. Like the machine had tried to write something it didn't have characters for. The skin between my shoulder blades crawled. I folded the slip without thinking and shoved it into my jacket pocket. Then I reset the counter back to 0, put the bus in gear, and pulled away. On the radio, I said I'd had a minor equipment glitch and had to pull over for a second. Dispatch told me to note it for maintenance and finish the route. Bored. Normal. I didn't tell them my equipment glitch had a hood and sat where the cameras could see it and the sensors couldn't. That night, when I tried to sleep, every creak in my house felt like someone shifting their weight in an empty aisle. I carried that ticket slip around the next day like it was alive. I must have unfolded it 20 times at my kitchen table. Same wrong time, same row of black squares where a name should go. The dash clock the night before had said 11:42 p.m. The slip said 3:17 a.m. when I'd already been home. Glitch, I told myself. Faulty clock in the fare box. Bad firmware. It was easier to argue with a circuit board than the alternative. At the depot that night, I tucked the slip behind my license in my wallet before I went in. I didn't want it in my pocket. Didn't want to throw it out either. Drivers were cycling in and out, swapping complaints. The TV on the wall was playing a game on mute. Someone left a box of cold donuts on the table. I poured coffee and ended up next to Rick. Older guy, other night route. Heavy set, seen everything twice. His vest was half-zipped, dark circles under his eyes. I mentioned, as casually as I could manage, that my counter had been misreading near Fayette Hollow. Left out the face. Just said it ticked up when nobody got on and that the printer had spit a bad ticket on its own. He went still in the middle of a sip. Didn't crack a joke. Didn't tell me I was lucky it wasn't the brakes. Just stared at the floor for a beat, then told me I should put in a maintenance note. Said the last buses on 19 always had quirks. Doors thinking they're open when they're shut. Counters that don't match what you see, announcements going off at the wrong time. He never looked me in the eye while he said it. Then he changed the subject hard, started talking about a new guy who'd backed into a pole. Everybody chuckled. The knot in my gut didn't. If an old driver refuses to meet your eyes while he talks about quirks on your stretch of road, that sticks with you. It stuck with me all the way out to my bus. Walk around, tap the dash, counter reading 0. Everything by the book. That night I made a decision. I wasn't stopping at Fayette Hollow, and I wasn't going to be alone if I could help it. The second part lasted until the route emptied itself like it always does. By Oak Hill, I had 3 people, a nurse, a camo jacket, and a teenager with a pizza box. They all got off there. 3 beeps. 3 to 0. Empty bus. Same drop in my stomach. I told dispatch I was clear. They told me to finish the loop. The town fell away. Trees moved in. Road narrowed. The Fayette Hollow sign flashed by. I didn't touch the brake. About 5 seconds after we passed it, the automated voice chimed, "Now approaching Fayette Hollow." My hand flinched on the wheel. The panel above the windshield lit up, then blinked off. That system isn't smart. It only calls a stop when we tell it to. I hadn't touched it. I kept driving. Counter. 0. Mirror. Empty rows. We hit one of the long straight stretches before the last bend. The sky felt low there, like someone pressing down on the roof of the world. I watched the road, tried not to stare at the mirror, tried not to listen for anything but the engine. Something flickered at the edge of the glass. Not a full movement, just a change in how the light fell. Someone was in the bus again. Same row as before. I didn't hear them get there. The counter didn't move. One glance. Nothing. Next glance. Hoodie, hands, posture. Closer to the front now. My tongue felt thick. My palms were slick. If you've ever worked nights and told yourself you're fine, then realized your body knows you're lying, that's what it felt like. I wanted to slam the brakes, but there was nowhere safe to do it. So I drove. Hands locked at 10 and 2. Eyes skimming from road to mirror to gauge cluster. The figure didn't sway. Didn't fidget. The bus rocked. It stayed pinned, like the world was moving around it. At the turnaround, I did the same thing I had the night before. Set the brake, turned the interior lights up, told the empty bus it was the end of the line. Counter. 0. Mirror. Empty. I didn't walk the aisle this time. There was no point. I knew I wouldn't find anything except the sense that something had been there a second before I looked. On the log back at the depot, I wrote one line. Stop announcement system called Fayette Hollow without input. Please check sensors. No faceless passengers. No talk of being watched. When I left, Rick asked if my night had been quiet. I said, fine. He said drivers used to joke about counting more people on the counter than they saw in the seats on the Graveyard Mile. Said they didn't joke about it much anymore. Said a couple guys had changed routes over it. I went home, lay in the dark, and realized whatever this was, it had rules. Empty bus. After Oak Hill, past Fayette Hollow. That's when it rode with me. By the 4th night, I'd stopped pretending it was just the equipment. I still went to work, still signed my sheet, tapped the dash, did the walk around. But that stretch after Oak Hill had gone from boring to the reason my chest felt tight all day. The weather didn't help. Wind pushing at the houses, sideways drizzle that stuck to everything, clouds sagging over the hills like wet wool. Headlights came back at you in a greasy halo. At the depot, they gave me the same bus as the night before. I didn't like that, but I didn't argue. Night runs don't get the fresh units. Walk around, wipers, tires, lights, counter, 0. First half of the shift, the storm did me a favor. Hardly anyone rode. A woman with clinking grocery bags. A guy in a raincoat. That was it. They both got off before Oak Hill. Counter ticked back to 0. The doors hissed shut. The bus felt twice as big. I told dispatch where I was. They mentioned flooding on a side road, told me to be careful. Their voice faded in and out with static as the rain hammered harder. That first wrongness came where it always does, near an old billboard frame in a gravel road I could drive past in my sleep. On the right, the empty billboard frame showed up like always. Rust, plywood, a rectangle against the trees. On the left, where the gravel cut and the sagging mailbox should have been, there was just more guardrail and trees. I told myself I'd missed it in the rain. Easy enough. The Fayette Hollow sign appeared in the beams. The gravel pad waited, full of water. I stayed in my lane and rolled by. Doors shut. No announcement, no chime. Up on the dash, my little GPS, one I'd bought myself years back, showed my bus arrow crawling along 9th, and a few seconds after we passed the sign, the arrow froze. The speed readout still changed. The clock still ticked, but the little triangle stopped just outside Oak Hill, like we'd never left. I tapped the case. Nothing. You don't need the GPS, I told myself. You've driven this road more than you've eaten breakfast. The automated voice chimed. Now approaching. Silence. No stop name. Just the chime. Hanging there, like it didn't know what word to use. The panel above the windshield lit blank white for a heartbeat, then went dark. The hairs stood up on my neck. Counter, 0. I tried to care more about that than the rest of it. The bus sloshed through a low dip where water had collected. The steering wheel tugged. I corrected. As we climbed out of it, I gave in and checked the mirror. Same row, same hood, same hands. Closer again. Every part of me wanted to stare, to make the details make sense. I kept my eyes on the road. The GPS beeped. I glanced. The map had changed. 19 was still there, but my bus marker was on a thin gray loop that veered off the main road and curved back. A side road that didn't exist. Outside, straight highway. No turn, no side road. Just wet pavement and trees. Inside the GPS, my arrow trundling along that phantom road anyway. If you're listening to this thinking you'd have been braver, maybe you would. Me, I did what I always do. I kept driving. The curve before the turnaround came up eventually. I felt the shift in the camber, the lean of the bus. Took it slower than usual. One glance in the mirror, the figure in its usual row. Another glance a few seconds later. Same posture, one row closer. No sound, no counter chime. Just nearer. By the time I rolled into the turnaround loop, my back hurt from how hard I'd been clenching. Brake set, interior lights up, cabin washed in yellow. No hoodie, no passenger. Counter, 0. The GPS blinked and snapped my arrow neatly back onto 19, as if nothing had happened. The clocks matched again. I sat there listening to the engine idle and the rain on the roof and thought, it's not just riding the bus, it's playing with the road. The night after that, I tried to be sick. I stared at my phone with my thumb over my supervisor's number and imagined the conversation. Attendance, reliability, being grateful to have steady work. There's only so many times you can say you're under the weather before they start suggesting you take a break. I went in. That morning, dropping my daughter at school, I'd had a moment. She turned and waved through the rain, and for half a second the light on the glass smeared her face into something featureless. Then she smiled, and it was just my kid again. I laughed it off and felt like a monster for even thinking it. Back home, I pulled my wallet out. The bad ticket was still folded behind my license. Same wrong time. Same blocky non-name. The paper was warm from writing against my chest, I slid it back and my eyes hit my license photo. It looked soft, not wrong enough to point at, just like someone had turned the sharpness down one notch. My features were there. They didn't want to snap into focus together. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to a selfie I'd taken a couple months earlier in the lot. Snow on the buses behind me. Zoomed in on my face. For a moment the background was crisp. Plates, flakes, logo, and my face looked smeared. Not blurred by motion, just lacking edges. I blinked. The app finished loading, or my brain did. Everything went normal. Nose, eyes, mouth, fine. I told myself I needed sleep and less caffeine. At the depot, the world felt a half step off. People's faces seemed wrong until I stared long enough for my mind to pick them apart. The coffee tasted like it always did. The same joke about the vending machine went around. A guy complained about his brakes. Normal. My bus was the same unit. Walk around, dash tap, counter at 0. Up to Oak Hill, it was almost peaceful. People got on, got off, the numbers matched. For almost an hour it felt like maybe the route was done with me. By the time we reached Oak Hill, I had a nurse and a fry oil-smelling guy. They both bailed. The counter dropped to 0. Empty bus. Past the last traffic light, the woods took over. The Fayette Hollow sign flashed past. I ignored it. No chime from the system. No glitch. For once, that made me more nervous than if it had. The radio crackled. I checked in. Dispatch sounded far away, like their mic was across the room. They said I'd already checked in 5 minutes ago. I hadn't. I told them so. They sighed, chalked it up to a button slip, told me again to finish the loop. Static walked over the last words. The mirror showed empty seats, until it didn't. Front row now, left side, right behind the yellow line. Same hood, same stillness. This close under the dome light, the shape of the head under the fabric was obvious. Too smooth. No bump for a nose, no hollows for eyes. Just a rounded bowl pressing against cloth. The air on the right side of my face went wrong. Colder, but also numb. Like when the dentist hits the nerve just right. A stripe from my cheekbone to my jaw that suddenly didn't belong to me. My grip tightened. The bus drifted. The rumble strip buzzed under the tires. I dragged us back toward center. My heart was climbing into my throat. The urge to look right, to see how close it really was almost unbearable. I kept my eyes on the road. We made it to the turnaround. Somehow, brakes set, lights up. The feeling at my cheek vanished like someone had cut a wire. Empty seats, flat cushions, counter at 0. I walked the aisle anyway. I had to know if that numb smear on my face meant anything. At the row it had used, my fingers tingled just being near the fabric. The air felt thick. I didn't stay long. Back home later, in the bathroom mirror, I noticed it. A strip along my right cheek where my stubble didn't grow as rough. The skin looked smoother, not healthier, just less detailed, like someone had dragged an eraser lightly over the pores. I ran my fingers over it. It felt like skin. My eyes said, photo blur. I thought about my ex saying I sounded weird on the phone. My kids saying I looked smudged. And I realized this wasn't just about something riding my bus. It was about how much of me would be left if it kept getting closer. There's a point where you stop asking, is this happening? And start asking, what did it do to the others? That's where I was by the next night. Routes outlast drivers. I'd never cared who'd run 7 night before me. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went to the depot early. The office door was half open. Dispatchers, binders, file cabinets, safety posters, nobody reads. I stepped in like I was supposed to be there. Along one wall, metal drawers labeled by route. Paper logs, old schedules, incident reports. Route 7 had 2 drawers. I opened the top. Most of it was boring. Passenger refused to pay. Minor collision in yard, no injuries. Verbal altercation, police notified. Then a phrase snagged my eye. Discrepancy in passenger count. Report from years before I hired on. Different driver. Short note. The onboard counter showed one more passenger than the driver could find after the last stop. They walked the bus, called dispatch, reset the system. No one discovered. Another, a year later. Same wording. Extra count at end of night. No body. Reset. Another, closer to my start date. That driver had scrawled, feeling watched. Someone else had underlined, sensors, and added, check done, no fault found. I closed that drawer and opened the second. Schedules. Old detour maps. Then a thin, unmarked folder. Inside, printed stills from the CCTV. Grainy black and white images of empty aisles. Not all from my route, but enough. One set showed a bus interior I recognized. Same seating, same grab bars. In the first still, one guy was asleep in the back, nobody else aboard. In the next, time-stamped maybe 30 seconds later, the same man slept. And in the middle of the bus, left side, under a dome light, sat a hooded shape. You couldn't see a face in that resolution, just dark fabric and pale hands on knees. The following stills walked it closer to the front, one row at a time. No blur between, no mid-motion. Just farther, nearer, nearer still. The last image in that sequence was from the camera above the driver, angled back. It showed the top of the seat, the aisle, and above the headrest, leaning in, the faint outline of that hooded head right where a passenger shouldn't be. In the margin, someone had written, driver reports sense of being watched at end of route. Counter shows one extra, no passenger located. Below that, in different ink, driver reassigned to day shift at own request. My hands shook hard enough the paper rattled. The dispatcher's chair squeaked behind me. I jammed the prints back in the folder, shut the drawer too fast. Metal clanged. They glanced over, asked if I needed something. I said I was checking my hours. They told me my route was the same and to grab my trip sheets. I walked out to my bus feeling like I'd just seen my own autopsy report. The shift to Oak Hill blurred. People came, went. I nodded, took fares, watched the counter. When the last ones, nurse and mechanic, stepped off, the number dropped to 1, not 0. Empty bus. Counter saying I wasn't alone. Out in the dark, past the last light, the woods closed in like always. Fayette Hollow passed. No stop, no chime. A minute later, the ticket printer went berserk. Not one slip this time. A stream of thermal paper poured out. Blanket first, then smeared. Little rows of block symbols where names should go. Time stamps jumping all over. Past dates, times I hadn't lived yet. Nonsense. I couldn't spare more than a glance. I just watched the paper coil in the corner of my vision like pale snakes. The counter ticked. 1, 2, 2. I looked in the mirror. It was in the front row now. Left side, just behind the line. 1 seat away from being able to reach my shoulder. The hood dipped, like it was paying attention. The air along the right side of my face went numb again. Colder, deeper this time. Like something was pressing my features flat from the inside. I eased us onto a wide shoulder, crossed the rumble strip, set the brake. Reached for the door switch. Nothing happened. No hiss, no clunk. Doors stayed shut. Dash light stayed dark. I hit the switch again. Nothing. The bus shifted on its suspension, just enough to feel like someone heavy had stood up behind me. That thick feeling of attention moved from the back of my neck to my right cheek. Not touch, just focus, like standing next to a live transformer. The radio crackled. My route number came through in my own voice. 7 night, Clear out of Oak Hill, layered with static, echoing. Past recordings playing themselves. Dispatch's answer overlapped with itself too. Snatches of "finish the loop" and "be advised" tangled together. I stared straight ahead at the reflection in the windshield, me in the driver's seat, and a darker smudge hovering just behind my shoulder where the CCTV still had caught that other driver's visitor. I took my hand off the door switch, grabbed the wheel instead. If the bus wasn't letting me out, there wasn't anywhere to go except forward. The night it finally broke didn't feel special when it started. Same depot, same bad coffee, same supervisor telling me, in a friendly voice, that I was lucky to have steady work. Out in the yard, the bus waited. Same number, same scar on the bumper. I flipped the master switch. Dash lit. Farebox whined. Radio snapped alive. The passenger counter over the door blinked once and landed on one. I hadn't opened the doors. I was alone. Reset. Off, on again. It went dark, then blinked back to 1. Dispatch called to ask if I was rolling. I said yes. On the route, the number never dropped below 1, no matter how many people got off. 8 people on board at one point, counter reading 9. By Oak Hill, when the last kid stepped down, it settled back to 1. Empty bus, 1 extra. Past town, fog waited. Not normal fog, not the usual river stuff. This was thick, chalk white, swallowing the beams 10, 15 feet out. The trees vanished. Even the guardrail disappeared except in quick flashes. I slowed. Wipers squeaked uselessly. Speedometer read 35. It felt like too much and not enough. The Fayette Hollow sign floated out of nowhere, reflective letters hanging in blankness, then gone. I didn't see gravel, didn't see trees, just that rectangle and then nothing. The automated voice chimed and didn't say a word. The panel above the windshield went white, stayed empty, then died. Mirror, pale tunnel, empty seats, no hood. Counter, 1. I kept going. There's a rhythm to that stretch. Dips, curves, straightaways. I didn't feel any of it. The road just continued. Same angle, same slight buzz of the tires, same thick white wall. On the dash, the GPS map lost its mind. Road lines vanished. My arrow spun slowly in place on a gray void. The dash clock said 11:41. The GPS clock said 3:19. I tried the radio. Got static. Then my own voice, again, doing old check-ins. Layered, overlapping. Dispatch talking to ghosts. That heavy awareness slid up the back of my neck. I checked the mirror. It was in the aisle now. Dead center, halfway up the bus, standing square, hood turned toward me, hands at its sides. The white around it seemed thinner, like it was the most solid thing on board. It didn't bob with the motion. Everything else rattled. It stayed pinned. Time smeared. Dash seconds crawled. 11:42, 11:43, 11:42 again. The engine note climbed to a pitch that made my teeth hurt. The road should have broken toward the turnaround. The little loop, the dead lamp, the house up the hill. Nothing appeared. Just more white, more asphalt that looked too similar. The counter clicked. 1, 2, 2. I hadn't opened the doors. There was no anywhere for a second passenger to come from. In the mirror, behind the standing figure, something else took shape. A second hood, farther back. Less defined, like a recording of a recording. My knuckles went bone white on the wheel. If you're still listening to this thinking you'd have bailed miles ago, maybe you would have. Me, I hit the point where I'd rather wreck on real asphalt than fade out in that white forever. There's one left-hand curve on 19 I hate more than any other. Sharp, with a drop and a guardrail that's been kissed by more bumpers than I want to think about. On clear nights, you see it coming. In fog, it comes for you. I eased the speed up. Somewhere under the panic, I felt it. A slight lean to the right. The change in the wheel as the road began to bend. The start of that curve. Every training reflex in me screamed to slow. I didn't. Guardrail glimmered in the fog ahead. Wet. Too close. In the mirror, the hooded thing was level with my shoulders now. One row back, leaning forward like it was interested. The air on the right side of my face went dead. Sensation just shut off. I turned the wheel. The bus lunged sidelong. Guardrails screamed. The world tilted hard. For a fraction of a second, the windshield was nothing but white, then black as the nose tipped into space. My stomach tried to crawl into my throat. Something in the aisle snapped forward. I felt, not weight exactly, but a pressure slam into the back of my seat, into me, like hands trying to push through. Glass exploded. Metal groaned. The whole world became noise and weight and pain. Then there was nothing. Hospitals sound wrong when you're used to buses. Too clean, too bright, too many beeps. No engine hum. No rattles. I woke up under white light with my head pounding and my chest banded tight. A nurse asked me my name, where I was, what day it was. I said I was driving Route 7. The road ended. They called it a concussion. Said I'd lost control on a curve. Said the guardrail gave way and the bus went down the embankment, but the trees caught it before we rolled all the way. I was lucky. Just me on board. No passengers. No fatalities. They repeated that part a lot. A cop came by, asked how fast I'd been going, whether I'd taken anything, how long I'd been awake. I told him it had been foggy. I'd overcorrected. The rest was blank. I thought about telling him the rest. The counter, the printer, the thing in the aisle, the way time bent. I pictured his face when I blamed the crash on a hitchhiking void where a person's face should be. I pictured my daughter having to defend "my dad thinks ghosts drive buses" to her friends. So I swallowed it. Said I must have dozed a second. Said I was sorry. He thanked me for being honest and wrote something I couldn't see. Later, HR came with my supervisor. Flowers, smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They said they were grateful no one else had been hurt. Then they told me I was off the road until specialists cleared me. Neurological, psychological. Just to be safe, they slid leave papers in front of me. At some point, I asked for a mirror. The nurse hesitated, then handed me a small plastic one. I looked rough. Bruises, swelling, stitches under one eye. But that wasn't what made my breath stop. It was that same soft edge feeling. If I focused on my eyes, they were fine. My mouth, fine. But taken together, my brain didn't want to lock them into a person. Like somebody had traced my face one time too many and worn the lines down. The strip along my right cheek where the numbness had hit on the bus looked wrong. Not scarred, just very smooth. No visible pores, almost like it had been smudged with a thumb. "Pain meds can make you feel out of it," the nurse said. "Give it a few days." She took the mirror away before I could ask to keep it. When my daughter visited, she climbed up carefully onto the bed. She said I looked blurrier, not in a mean way, just like she was saying my hair was messy. Her mom shushed her, asked if this meant I'd finally switched to days, for everyone's sake. I didn't know what to say. A few days later, I went to the DMV. Not because I had to, because I wanted something on paper that said I existed the way I remembered. The clerk pulled my record up, frowned, asked me to spell my name. Twice. My CDL was flagged under review, which I expected. But when she brought my profile up, the photo slot was blank. No old mugshot, no pixelated face. Just no image on file. She muttered about system updates. Said it'd been eating photos. Tried again. Same result. She suggested taking a new one, then read more of my record and shut that down. "Come back when the medical hold's cleared," she said. On the way out, I caught my reflection in the glass door. For one sick heartbeat, there was nothing where my features should have been. Just the suggestion of a head and shoulders and a smear where a face belonged. Then everything snapped back. Eyes, nose, mouth, me. I didn't go home right away. I went to the depot. Guys at the gate waved me through like I was made of glass. In the driver's room, conversation stalled for a second when they saw me, then picked back up. Rick was filling out a log. He asked how I was. I said, "Fine." He asked if they'd said anything about the route. I said no. He said he'd run 7 nights the last 2 evenings. He said the counter had read 1 when he started both nights, no matter how many times maintenance calibrated it. Said one of those nights, nothing overt happened. No announcements at wrong stops, no printer fits, no shadows in the mirror. He said that kind of nothing scared him worse. I asked if he'd seen anyone. Anything. He shook his head. Said he'd felt like someone was standing in the stairwell half the night, though. Just out of frame. He asked if I wanted the route back when I got cleared. My mouth said no before my brain could think of a nicer answer. He nodded like that was what he'd expected. On the way out, I passed the camera room. Door cracked. No one inside. Monitors humming. One screen was looping interior footage from a recent night on my old bus. I recognized the unit number. Rick at the wheel. A few passengers. Then none. On the overlay, the counter dropped. 2, 1, then stayed at 1 when the bus emptied. For a while, nothing happened. Just Rick driving, the aisle behind him. Then, in the faint reflection on the windshield, a darker patch appeared behind his seat. Not clear enough to yell, "Ghost" at. Just enough to make my skin crawl. A hood-shaped absence where light didn't quite land. I leaned closer. My own reflection layered over the screen. For a second, my blurred face and his overlapped, and the shadow behind the driver could have been standing behind either of us. The dispatcher coughed behind me. I straightened, said I was just leaving, and got out. That night, at my kitchen table, I propped my phone against a mug and started talking. Not to HR, not to cops, to whoever might listen to this and believe it long enough to maybe survive it. I keep thinking about those reports. Extra passenger, no body found. Drivers reassigned. Drivers who just stopped showing up. I don't dream about the crash. I dream I'm 3 rows back with my hood up, hands on my knees, watching someone else drive my route. I dream I'm behind their shoulder and there's nothing where my face should be, and they never turn around. Sometimes, when I wake up too fast, I feel the vibration of a steering wheel in my fingers even though I'm lying in bed. Sometimes I hear the air brakes outside my window at 11:42 p.m. I don't live on the route. A couple nights ago, I heard that hiss and the low idle of a diesel. Curiosity, or something worse, dragged me to the curtain. Headlights washed the wall as something big rolled by. For a second, I saw the silhouette of a bus in the glow. No route number, just a blank display. Through the glass at the front, where the driver's face should have been, I saw smooth nothing. In the hall, the cheap little counter my landlord put over the apartment building door to look secure flickered from 0 to 1 and back again. Maybe it's brain damage. Maybe there's a tumor rewriting my perception. Maybe none of this will matter when I drop dead in a grocery aisle. Or maybe there's something on that stretch of 19 that likes drivers, likes routes, likes people who go in circles every night until even they forget where the line between work and self is. Maybe it doesn't ride the bus so much as overwrite whoever's behind the wheel, one detail at a time. So here's what I'll leave you with, if you made it this far. If you ever end up on a late bus out of Beckley, or anywhere that feels like it, and the woods start crowding the road and the town lights are gone, look up at the little red number over the front door. Count the bodies around you. Count yourself. If that number says there's one more than you can see, don't waste time craning your neck, and don't call out to ask who's there. They're already sitting behind your driver, and whether you see a face when they lean in has nothing to do with your eyes.